Oh man. So, hey, what'd you guys think of the video this week? Yeah,
2 thumbs up.
It was good.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really good.
I loved, of course, Jeremy being a youth guy too. I think there's a natural connection there, but just the personality that he brings across and that personal touch was just amazing. I really enjoyed it. I don't know that there was anything new as far as something we didn't think about before, but I definitely think there was like his heart was out there, and his passion for disciple making and stuff like that was just very, very, very obvious. So that was good.
I had never, I guess you're right. It's not that there was any new concepts, but I think he took some of the verses that he used, and I had never really thought of Acts 16 just in that section as such a clear, discipleship verse. I guess I hadn't really thought about it that way, talking about the cost of being a disciple and the process of being a disciple. I thought, man, I wrote some notes in my Bible. I'm like, man, I got to remember that one. That's good.
Yeah. That's
so
good.
yeah, I really, really, really enjoyed. I had zero issues staying awake for him. It was just, it was really good.
Okay, and
this I was the same way in the Act 16 because I was as he's unfolding the story, I understand why Paul circumcised Timothy, and I already knew that whole process, but I guess I never thought of it as Timothy had to actually go, okay, I guess I didn't think about that. So that was actually kind of interesting to me because you have to have a buy-in on both sides. You know what I mean? So that was a little bit of, I agree with John, that was a little revelation for me there.
Yeah, so often when I read Acts, so often we read it with our different lenses on, and so it's easy for me to read it from a kind of a historical, theological perspective because you're seeing this transition as it's going. And so when I read that section, you're exactly right, Glenn. I see the theological change and I'm like, oh yeah, he got circumcised because of those Jews and everything. And so, but I completely miss the kind of that personal, like, you're right. Timothy was going, you want me to do what?
That's
exactly. Yeah, totally. I didn't really.
And here's the other thought. It says in there, and Paul circumcised him. Did Paul circumcise him? I mean, did Paul himself take out the knife? I don't think I'd want to do that to any of my disciples.
He did it in the company of people as proof type of a thing. But I don't know if he did it because that ain't me. I'll tell you right now. Forget
that.
I'll start baptizing before I do that.
That would be the cost of being a discipler right there. Like, I don't know if I want to disciple anybody. If they've not been circumcised yet, I'm not ready.
John, I think you announced to the young guys that you're meeting with that you need to circumcise them the next time you meet.
I think
with a flint knife.
Oh yeah.
Oh man,
Moses style.
I think my disciple-y list would shrink. I may get out of it too, actually.
The cost of being a disciple. Jesus said it was costly.
Yes, it is, obviously.
Count the cost.
Yeah, and I mean, imagine that. It's not like Timothy was a young guy. I mean, we know he was young, but not like, not baby young that we think of circumcision. Oh my gosh, that's just brutal.
Yeah.
Well, he was probably late teens.
Yeah.
That's probably what he was. Can you imagine when you're like, let's say 18? Can you imagine, you go to this guy and you're like, I'm ready to be a disciple. Well, you got to get circumcised to follow me. Yep. 18 years old, you were full of vim and vinegar then. And getting circumcised.
Nothing. That's right.
When you're that young, there's a certain mentality like, okay, somebody will dare you to do something. Jump off the building, okay.
Not that.
Oh man, hey, that is so funny because I'm just thinking in my mind when my boys were a little bit younger, I mean, they're 20 and 17 right now, but they were probably 13 and 10. We switched doctors. And for the first time in their life, they had a female doctor. And right away, you know, she's like, okay, we you know, you're both into sports. We need to do the sports physical. And they and again, at that age, they had no clue what she was saying. Here I am as dad going, oh, I already know what's coming next, you know. And
Right.
and so she leaves the room, and I said, okay, guys, I said, here's what's coming. I said, she's going to
Yeah.
test you for a hernia. And I said, if you are uncomfortable with it being a female doctor, then you need to let me know now. And my oldest son, in all his wisdom, said, Dad, it doesn't matter if it's a female or male. I'm uncomfortable either way. And I'm just like, wow, that's pretty wise. I mean, for a 13-year-old, I'm like, okay. And, you know, and both of them, they kind of sucked it up, and they said, okay, just do what you got to do. You're a professional, which I'm going, wow, they handled that way better than I would have. And then we get to this passage, and I'm going, yeah, that's a hard sell. I don't care if you're an okay kind of teenager or not. That's a hard sell.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. Because he had to know what that meant.
Yeah.
Circumcised. I mean,
Yeah, because it talks about his father was Jewish, right? Is that what the
mother was
father was
Mother.
Jewish, father was Gentile? Yeah.
Yeah,
So through the Jewish, I mean, he would have known. You would think what that had to deal with. Yeah. Oh, crazy.
I got 3 boys, and I had that conversation with my 2 oldest ones when they were getting into sports. So there's this thing called turn your head and cough, and I'm trying to prep them. And I think they gave me the more of the Timothy. They weren't as wise as your kids. They're more Timothy oriented. Like, what? What's going to happen now? Sorry, guys. It is what it is, buddy. So.
Oh, well, you know, and I don't know if you guys have had to do this recently, but my youngest, last year he had to have another physical for soccer, and they don't even do that anymore. They just, you know, it's simple press on your stomach now somehow. And I'm just like, well, man, why couldn't they figure that out, you know, 40 years ago when I was going through that? Come on now.
It's a rite of passage.
Exactly.
It's a rite of passage.
just as this
National
is when you get
stranger
older, right?
cupping. That's a rite of passage, pal.
Oh, hey, Glenn, how old are you?
50.
Oh, so we all know about the old exam then.
I have yet to have it.
Oh,
Personally.
I
God.
haven't had it.
really? Oh, you guys are.
No.
My doctor told me that when I came for my physical at age 45, I would have it. I'll be 47 this year. Haven't scheduled that physical yet.
The topic came up.
Yeah.
Colonoscopy was mentioned, but we moved on. That ship sailed.
Then you switch doctors?
Came up and it was on to something. I got toe fungus. How about that? Let's look at that.
Oh my gosh, Dwayne, that's hilarious. Just imagine Timothy. Yeah, I think I'll go to somebody else. I'll be their disciple instead.
What about Silas? Maybe Apollos. What are their requirements? That's what we do today. Sometimes Christians they try a different church if they don't like the requirements of one.
If he was a top, you know, if Timothy was a top prospect, and you know, then he could have you know put it out there as far as which one of you is giving me the best benefits. And Paul, your program seems a bit strong. So
these guys are willing to waive that aspect of it.
that's right.
Oh my gosh, you guys are making me cry.
Paul didn't have good eyesight. I'm not letting him do it.
Well, did you notice that when Jeremy was reading the passage initially, when he read it initially, he said, and he circumcised Timothy before the Jews, and so I wondered if that was a translation thing. When he read it later on, he actually read the words because of the Jews. But I'm in my mind going, you know, here's Timothy, drop trowel, you know, you're getting circumcised before the Jews for them to make sure. And I'm thinking, oh my, that adds a whole nother layer of it. And so
that's another dimension.
that's a different dimension right there. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh man, what a crazy.
But that's all I'm
crazy-
saying is, historically, Paul, not good eyesight. So I'm just not letting him do it. Don't want him to.
Hey Paul, don't you have somebody else can do this?
Seriously, can you outsource that, pal? You know?
It's like there's an old Saturday Night Live sketch where it's a parody of, I think, like a Lincoln commercial where they're cutting diamonds in the backseat of a Lincoln sedan or something. But in the Saturday Night Live parody, it's a rabbi circumcising a baby in the backseat of a moving car to show how smooth the car goes.
Oh my gosh. See,
That's it right there.
this has like a sermon all over it for you guys that preach on a normal basis. I mean, you can do a whole
That
sermon.
would be my last sermon anywhere.
Well,
That would be. if I were to
you know,
preach-
the takeaway is what we've known all along. There's a cost to being a disciple.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
That's right.
I can't think of a
I'll tell
higher
you,
one.
amongst the men, there wouldn't be a dry eye in the crowd. I'll tell you right now.
So, isn't
I'm
that
There
funny?
wouldn't be a dry eye amongst the
I'm envisioning all the squirming. You know, that's
Yeah.
the thing. You talk about
yeah.
that sort of stuff, and you just see this. You know, these guys just kind of moving around like this as they're. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
men. Yeah.
Well, think about it.
You say the word circumcised. It
Yes.
gets a reaction.
My first son, I will never forget it either. When he was only 2 days old or whatever he was, and they said, okay, they came in and asked me and my wife, hey, do you want him circumcised? And we said, yeah. And totally out of mind. Once you say yeah, they move on, they go do whatever to get it scheduled. But it goes out of your mind pretty quick. And then they came the next day and they said, okay, the doctor's here. He's ready for your son to be circumcised. And I literally had to have my wife go because I was like, I handed the baby to her and I'm like sitting there apologizing to him. I'm like, he doesn't understand a word that I'm saying. He has no clue. And yet I had to hand him to my wife and she's the one that had to go. And I sit there going, wow, that's a powerful psychological thing. So think about that going into this story going, wow, that's pretty powerful for men anyway.
I know. I mean, I was circumcised as a kid, so I don't know any different. But when my son was circumcised, I had really no idea what they did, what that would actually look like. And I just remember, it was like, yes, we want him circumcised. He came back, and then the reality of like, oh my goodness, they literally just cut this. And I can remember, I'm thinking, no wonder you're crying, buddy.
Yeah.
I would be crying too.
Yes.
It was just, that was it. But I still go back. There's a guy that goes to our church, Dwayne Terpstra, and he talked about how he was in his 30s, early 30s, because he had never been.
Yeah.
And that whole area totally dried out, and he had to be circumcised in his early 30s.
Wow.
And he said it was the worst pain he had ever imagined in his life. And he told people, he says, don't ever not circumcise your kids. He says it was horrible. And so I think, what do you think? When the kid's a little baby, can't tell any different, he's not going to remember that whole thing. Or when you get to be an adult and you're going, oh my goodness, the reality of this is setting in.
Yeah.
Now you need therapy.
Now you need therapy.
Exactly.
Well, you think back to Abraham, and was it Abraham where all those men had to be there was the story where they circumcised all the men and they killed them all because they were all weakened, because of it. It wasn't Abraham, but man, I think,
Weakened.
terrible.
That's a loose translation right there. They were weakened. They were weakened.
Mortally wounded.
Exactly.
Oh my
Yeah, you can just picture some of the leaders like, get up and fight, man. I can't. It hurts. So.
You get up and fight, pal.
Holy smokes. Well, that was quite the opening question there. What'd you think?
Right. You can
All
tell.
right, guys. It's been a good session today. I'll see you guys later. It's been fun.
Oh,
So that's
hey,
the cost of if that's the cost for discipleship right there. That's the price tag right there.
I mean, now translate that symbolically though, what we're asking people to do, and put that psychological piece involved in that. That we're it's not a joke. We're asking people to commit to something very serious, and and no wonder Paul says lay down. You got to give up everything and take up the cross. Kind of thing. And man, that I've never equated the two before, really, as far as the psychological piece and the commitment piece. Because I was raised in the church, I knew pretty much the culture of discipleship. Even though our church didn't practice it probably the way they should have, I still knew. And for someone new coming in that we're asking to, basically give up a part of who they are. I mean, literal flesh, to be a disciple. That's pretty serious. So I think that was really good for me to hear.
Yeah.
And even this discussion even makes it better.
Yeah.
So hey, I'm gonna
I was
skip.
just
Go ahead,
recount.
Glenn.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
Oh
you're
no,
up.
go ahead.
Nope, I'm not gonna start till you do now.
Well, I was just gonna say I was recounting. Like last week, we asked if we were discipling anybody and stuff, and I've got a few people that I'm touching base with, but I'm not really. There's one guy that who approached me about discipling and stuff, and and I tried to prep him about that cost thing. There's a cost.
Yeah.
And you're a young guy. He wasn't too young, but he's starting a family and he has young kids and things like that. And trying to prep him, saying, there's a cost. I need you to understand that piece. And if we're going to work together and do that and go on this journey together and stuff, there's going to be a cost. I mean, there's a buy-in on your side, and oh yeah, I understand that. And of course that didn't quite pan out for him. And I was just recounting to somebody, I was counseling somebody just yesterday, through this whole pandemic thing. They're having to basically redefine their lives, and I was just telling them how about that cost, the cost of, not just the financial cost, but the cost for reinventing yourself or rededicating yourself to a different course of action. And that's basically what discipleship is dedicating yourself to, a course of action that ends, with a journey with the Lord, and we just have traveling companions, along the way. And it just, I just happened to, have that conversation with somebody yesterday about that buy-in. So there's a lot of, I was talking to this person. I told them the hardest thing in the world for anybody to do is to step backwards. Everybody envisions life as a progression.
Yeah.
I reach a certain level of success. I reach a certain level of financial success or social success or whatever. And then, life will change directions, or you will want to change directions. And then you have to kind of start over as you're going in a new journey. And sometimes you have to take a step backwards sometimes. And that's the hardest thing for everybody to do, because our minds aren't set that way. We're always in that constant progression, always in that constant forward motion. We're sharks in that way. We can't stop moving forward. And I think that's as I was listening to Jeremy, I was kind of thinking about that concept about the discipleship and the buy-in. Is not only was the physical part kind of staggering as far as his buy-in, as far as Timothy's buy-in, but I just recounting, even in my own life, how sometimes you reach a certain level and you're looking, to the beyond that. And sometimes to get beyond, or to get where you need to be or where you want to be, you got to step back. And sometimes that's the most difficult part in the whole journey, is backtracking to move forward. I don't know. I was just thinking about that. It just popped in my head when you said something there, Greg.
No, that's good. I guess for me, and I'm curious to hear from what you guys say. This is not, most of my questions today are not going to be what we journaled on, I think anyway. But it's just more curiosity to hear from you guys on, talk about strategy a little bit. When we are talking about discipleship or disciple making, Glenn, you just talked a lot about, even stepping back, and here's the commitment. Talk about strategy as far as that commitment level. At what point do we ask people to be all in? At what point do we say, hey, you got to be circumcised, figuratively, of course, because we know there's a journey that's involved. There are people that we're around all the time, and that is part of the disciple making process. But maybe they're not to that point where we go, okay, they're 100% in. At what point do you guys see that? And is it okay?
How many cities did Paul go to? And yet we don't read about him grabbing a Timothy or a bunch of Timothys at every city he went to. This stands out as kind of an anomaly. It's like, we write a whole section about it. What was it about Timothy that really jumped out at Paul, that Paul would say to him, hey, I want you to join me on a journey? And I think that was the thing. I remember early on in my ministry being challenged about discipleship. And I'm sure it had to do with a young man by the name of Scott Rolfe, who beat it into all of us, And so I remember early on being challenged about discipleship and thinking, okay, who are the guys that I need to reach out to? And so immediately you go into this mode of, I got to find some disciples. I got to find them, so we start looking around like, are you, it's kind of like, are you my mom? Are you my, that old book, but it's like, are you my disciple? Is it? And I can see back over the years from some of the people that I've journeyed with, that there have been those who it felt like a square peg round hole. It just felt that way. It didn't have a natural feel to it. It felt like work. And then there have been others where it doesn't feel like work at all. It just, you do life together. There are things you talk about, and not even, I think of two guys that I'm discipling right now, Anthony and Trey. Both these guys, they're in their mid-20s. It's not like they're my age. Their backgrounds, one's maybe a little more similar than the other, but very different than me. But it just feels, it's not work. It's like we just do life together. So I think even some of the other guys, like I said, it's just a natural thing. And so I think the more that I go along, I don't feel like I have to work as hard to like, okay, all right, I have to totally change myself or begin to like totally different things in order to do this, in order to have this disciple. It just, and I wonder what that was with Timothy. Was there a connection that he and Paul had? What, did they sit down over a meal of hummus and, whatever, and just be like, man, there's just such a kinship that we feel here. Hey, you want to join me on the journey? All right, I'll do it. I don't know.
Well, and Paul describes it as a father-son relationship.
Yeah.
So there is that affinity. There is you're my spiritual son. You're like a son to me.
Yeah. I know you've had that
like
over the years many times, Dwayne, for people you've discipled. You've done that a ton of times. Yeah,
I have. And there is a kinship. And part of it is you're looking to say, God, who are you placing in my path? Who do you want me to get involved with at this deeper level? Mm-hmm. But yet I think, and you don't want to, in youth ministry, any kind of ministry, I think it's sometimes easy to go after the winsome people, the attractive people, those that have, have this personality maybe that really meshes. And so I ask myself, and it's not that I go for the opposite, but there's certain people that you want to identify with. It's like, when you're in school, grade school, whatever, you want to hang with a popular kid. So
Right.
so in discipleship, it's not that, but yet there needs to be an affinity there, I think. That connection that you can connect in life, and on that deeper level as well as that spiritual level. And sometimes, like you said, it clicks. Sometimes it doesn't.
I wonder, Dwayne, there's the people who, they're like, okay, God, I'm going to give you my life. Just please don't send me to Africa. You know, and
I was hoping he would send me to Africa. He hasn't yet.
but I think, I think it's almost like we have this fear that following God is going to be just I'm not going to like any of this. It's almost like we view it like circumcision,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Right.
if I really surrender, he's going to require circumcision. I'm going to be stuck in Africa someplace completely miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it's like when you follow God, yeah, there's costs involved, but truly it's like he gives you the desires of your heart. And I find out that, even though I have a new appreciation for rap music because of my affiliation with Trey. I'm not a rap guy, but that dude can spit some words. And so I have a real appreciation for what some of these guys can do. I didn't start with that, but just out of the room. So I think there are those things that as we say, okay, God, what would you have me to do? He just does it. But I think there are other times where maybe these people will, they'll be in your life for a time and then they're gone. And
that's that whole idea that we talked about a year or two ago about foster parenting.
Yeah.
Spiritual foster parenting. We have this notion that we're going to invest in something, they're going to be in our lives for the rest of our lives. And
Yes.
I shared an article with John. I forget even where it came from, but it said, maybe the better perspective is look at it as spiritual foster parenting.
Yes.
They're going to be in your life for a season, and you get to contribute to their life for a season. They get to contribute to your life for a season. But not everyone is going to be a lifelong relationship, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That I have thought about that article many times, Dwayne. I think it's helped me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially in youth ministry, because I've discipled lots of, people, college kids and things like that, and developed them into youth ministry work and stuff like that. And, I know that there have been, it's been that time. It's those seasons, because I don't know, maybe it's just because of the age level that you pick, you pick somebody young in college, something like that. Well, they're in the middle of a transition in their own life. You know what I mean? They still don't know exactly where they're going or what they're doing. You know what I mean? And I love it when they're like, hey, I want to do this. I want to be a disciple. I want to, learn youth ministry and stuff like that. And then you go, okay, well, you need to study this, and you need to look at this, and you need to organize this. And they go, holy cow, you make this look easy. I'm like, well, I just have experience doing it. I've organized my time and my talents to get to that point, and we're going to get you to that point. And, it's just, I can remember back to all the people that I mentored in, and I don't know that they're still not in that function as far as, like youth ministry or anything like that. But I think that in contributing to their life, I think they have made a dedication to, following after the Lord, and maybe in a stronger way. And, it just kind of goes back to God uses what God uses, and, for his honor and his glory, all things work together for good, because if God's involved, only good's going to come of it. So it just is, I appreciate that we're both on the journey, because we always sometimes focus on, I'm dumping into you, and you don't realize they're dumping into you too. And that's kind of where I'm at now. All the people that have dumped into me, and seeing if I can utilize those things and you know what I mean? Just kind of organizing those things and utilizing those things goes into my congregation, you know, into the people and things like that. So
Yeah, that's good. I think for me, you know, I was always, I'm sure we've all heard the acronym, but, you know, look for those people who are faithful, available, teachable. And I've had to learn along the way that um, there's a kind of a side note or a kind of subtext there that faithful, available, teachable at whatever level that they can, you know, because before I put this high standard on people that, oh, well, you know, they don't attend church as much as they should, or man, they can't get together once a week. How am I going to do this? You know,
They
or
swear.
yeah,
They
yeah,
swear.
whatever it is, yes, or
hmm
wow, teachable. They're asking way too many questions and not just listening to what I say. You know, so that that acronym for me, it's still there, but it's got that subtext now going, no, I'm going to, like you guys have all said, I'm going to be paying attention to who God is crossing paths with, you know, for me, and then going, okay, at what level can they commit? And what is that next step, you know, as far as faithful? Maybe faithful for them is attending church once a month. And hey, what maybe the challenge to them, you know, after you start this relationship, whatever it looks like, is, hey, I know you guys can really only make it once a month, but what if you attend church once a month and we get, you know, just have a phone call, you know, every other week? You know, whatever that small next step is, I think that's part of the disciple making, is just moving people along at whatever level they can commit. And then we'll know pretty quick if they bail after a little while, then we know, okay, let's move on to the next person or whatever it is, which is super hard for me also, because I'm a lifer, dude. I am, once I've got my hooks in any type of relationship, I don't like letting go. So that spiritual fostering, man, that bugs me. It just bugs me in my psyche. Just going, no, I'm not like that. I can't do that. And yet it's so true. It is so true. How many people have we met over the years that we can talk to them now? We don't talk to them often, but when we do, it's still meaningful and it's still deep and it's rich. But we had to, at some point, we've grown apart or let them go or whatever that looks like. That's good.
I think the piece, even hearing through all this, is it has to be a spirit-driven process. It's not a formula. It's not the, you know, the 3 steps, the faithful, available, teachable. Yep, you check all the boxes. You know, I always go back to that illustration of Joshua, you know, with the Gibeonites, and, you know, with when they came in with their old wineskins and their moldy bread and everything, he's like, yep, you check the boxes. And God's like, if you had asked me, I would have told you they're faking. Okay. You know, and so I think of that when, you know, with this whole, we can have our mentality, and I don't think it's a bad thing. It's not like we should not evaluate anything, but at the end of the day, it is a spirit-driven process from start to finish. And if we try to make it a formula, then that we, you know, kind of distance ourselves from the work of the Spirit, from a daily, moment by moment. What do we say? What do we not say? How do we lead? When's the time to give up? When do we pursue and keep pushing through? And I think the word there you're looking for, Greg, is there's faithful, available, teachable, but there's a caveat.
Yes.
And that word caveat is the, you know, it's like, okay, the caveat is up to their level. And
Yes.
yeah.
That's so good. That is good. Caveat. I didn't think of that one. So it's fancy French words or whatever that is. That would not even go after that.
Yeah, oui.
Exactly. Oh man. Hey, the one thing, you know, Jeremy touched on the why, the who, the how, which I thought was brilliant, by the way, just keeping it simple like that, because it helps me remember anyway. I started with Farm Bureau Insurance 5 years ago now, full time, and then working with Scotty, obviously. But one of the first things that I've learned is through ministry and even my job is why. Why am I doing what I do? Because everything we do is going to come out of our why. And I'm just curious for you guys, and I'd love to hear this, is what is your why? why are you doing what you do right now? I mean, I know Dwayne's in real estate. I know, John, you're a pastor. Glenn, you're a pastor. I do Farm Bureau Insurance and this disciple-making ministry. But what is the why? Why did you get into ministry? Why are you a pastor? Why are you deciding real estate's what you want to do?
I got into it for the money. That's why I got into it.
I knew we were paying you too much.
Oh,
Well,
No,
I'll tell you.
wow, that was all three of you.
Oh, go, John.
You can go, Glenn.
I remember this is all. So I'm sitting in Sunday school class. I'm 16 years old. My Sunday school teacher is Steve McFadden, who I grew up with as being my Sunday school teacher, youth leader type of guy. Fantastic guy. Sitting in Sunday school class. And I remember it all like it was yesterday. I'm sitting in Sunday school class. He comes to me and he says, you might know the answers to some of these questions, so kind of let people answer. Because I was, I don't know, kind of a student, I guess. I think all of us who are
A Bible nerd?
Christian, nerdy in our own way. You know what I mean? You know, you got screen up there on your screen, and the fact that I know that makes me nerdy. But you know, we all kind of study the Bible and stuff like that. But I was 16 years old, and I'm sitting there in class, and he was talking about how the temple curtain was torn when Jesus died, that type of thing. And after class, I remember sitting there thinking to myself, you know what? I believe this is true. And if I believe it's true, and this stuff really happened, I suppose I should probably do something about it. Yeah, you know what I mean? If it's real and I believe it's real, then it should probably be part of my life somehow. And, you know, that was the dawning of whatever. You know, the Lord took me down a journey and wound up where I am now. You know, when I was going to Grace Bible College, nobody would have guessed that this is where I would have wound up, and I wouldn't have guessed it either. I would have laughed at somebody had they told me. But you know, that's the thing. It was just one of those aha moments where I just kind of realized, you know, if God is who He is, and this is real, then I need to do something. Yeah, you know, it's one of those things where if you know you can do something and you don't do it, it's almost a travesty. You know what I mean? That you didn't utilize it. You know, I use an illustration sometimes that, like, if you knew the cure to cancer, like if you had 100% surefire way to cure cancer and you just kept it to yourself, I mean, what good is that? How is that of benefit to anybody? And I think my thing is, you know, why am I doing this? Well, I never would have imagined, my 16-year-old self would have never imagined I'd get to where I am now. But through the journey, God unfolded it and unpacked more and more and more, and the journey became bigger and longer and more involved, and I guess that's the buy-in on my part to kind of go with the, you know, the whole thing Jeremy kind of went with. That was the buy-in on my part to just continue to say, okay, you know, I want you to quit your job that you're making tons of money at in Arizona, managing restaurants, living on your own. I had my own house, making all kinds. I want you to quit that job, and I want you to move to California and become a pastor. And I went, okay. And, you know, and then, you know, and then I was a youth pastor for years. And then another church had a pastoral opening, and I want you to quit that job. I want you to quit being a youth pastor, and I want you to go be a senior pastor. And I went, okay, you know, and I want you to, you know, I want you to move from one side of the coast to the other side of the coast to follow being a pastor. And I just kind of kept going, okay, you know, you don't see it unfolding that way, but I guess it's, for me anyway, it was it wasn't as much about the journey as it was about my willingness to take it. You know, I had to realize that I needed, if what I believed is true, then I got to take that journey. I got to just keep saying yes.
Yeah.
And when God challenged me, I got to keep saying yes, because the journey's not over. And I'm 50 years old now. You know, I've been here for about 4 years now, and I know the journey's not over. The journey's still going, and I've seen the journey even open up even further, you know, and you know, for things to come. And I'm like, wow, you know, okay, you know, you know.
So let me, what is the benefit to others? You're saying, okay, by you saying, okay, how does that benefit other people, Glenn?
Because along the way, over the course of the years of going through there, I've had lots of people where I've taken them with me, and hey, this is my stage in the journey, but I'd like you to come with me just to kind of, you know, see how it unfolds. And I've had lots of people in youth work that I did with that, and out in when I was a senior pastor out in California, I had lots of people that I did that with. I pulled them in and, hey, why don't you take this part of the journey with me? Why don't you, you know, develop that? And I do have some guys out here that want to develop themselves in youth ministry and in becoming a pastoral ministry and stuff like that. And they want to join in this journey with me and stuff. And I'm helping some people in the region kind of on a broader scale to help develop some of their programs and things like that. And that all just, the only reason they would like my assistance with that is because of my journey. You know, had I not gone down this path earlier on in life, I would be of no help to them now. But because I did, I'm help to them now. And that's the whole point. You know, I mean, if somebody wanted to ask me to rebuild a carburetor, I'm sorry, I haven't been on that journey. You know, my brother's a mechanic life. He could do it with his eyes closed. Me, on the other hand, that wasn't my journey. You know what I mean? If you needed help doing something else, well, yeah, that might be part of my journey. So how does it benefit others is my willingness to allow my journey. You know, Jeremy said something really important that I thought was really great. You got to fill yourself up. And then when you're overflowing, as God would, you know, have us to be overflowing with him, we have the capability of flowing or pouring ourselves into somebody else. If you have a glass of liquid that's half full, if you have a half full glass of liquid, you'd be hard pressed to pour out anything into anybody, because all you have is what you have. And if you get rid of that, then you have nothing. But if you continue to fill yourself up and you're overflowing, then it's easy for you to pour into somebody else because you have that excess. So what benefit is it to hoard that or to not allow that to pour into somebody else? So to answer your question, what's the benefit? I got to keep allowing myself to pull people into the journey and overflow into those things. And I got to challenge myself to keep going on this journey. Got to keep challenging myself to say yes, because that's going to keep pouring into me so that I will overflow and be able to pour into those around me.
Okay, that's good. Anybody else?
Dwayne, how about you?
Yeah, I'm really appreciated what Glenn had to say. I kind of got lost in his thoughts, but and if I recall, the original question was you know, kind of what compelled us to get involved in what we're doing, and
yeah.
And for me, it was a journey. It's been not always a straight path for me, but and even now, you know, Greg, you mentioned real estate, but to me, I don't see real estate even really as my primary thing. I still see ministry. You know, it wasn't a direct path to ministry. I was involved as a volunteer in ministry right out of high school, involved in youth ministry volunteering, and then eventually felt God calling me to take that deeper. So I went to Grace and got a degree in youth ministry. I think I was the first graduate with a youth degree from GBC, a new program they had started, and went into youth ministry from there, and did adult ministry for a bit, went back into youth ministry. Even the entire time I was doing adult ministry, I was volunteering in youth ministry. So I still see myself in ministry. It's just a matter of what form that's going to take. And I see that as God's calling on all of our lives to be in ministry. And, we may do different things to pay the bills. For me, real estate was a good fit to pay the bills. I was still enjoying youth ministry. In some regards, I think maybe I stepped out too soon as far as, being in a paid capacity, but real estate was a good fit. And I guess I was looking at it from a perspective of, I'm probably not going to do this till I'm 70, although, maybe I could have, so real estate just seemed like a good fit. And there were some changing circumstances at home too, with my wife not able to work due to some health concerns. She'd always been kind of our primary breadwinner, which allowed me to work in churches and other places where I didn't get paid a lot of money. And she had to step out of teaching. So different circumstances, but, real estate is an opportunity to serve people. And then that's what I like about it. It's a serving industry, and it still affords me a very flexible schedule to be involved in ministry and involved in the lives of people. So it's just maybe a different route, but it's still all ministry to me.
That's good. Let me ask you this, Dwayne. What was it about youth ministry that made you kind of go that way?
I think for me, youth ministry is where I see a lot of hope. It's kind of getting in at the ground level, and nothing against adult ministry, but if we can reach people while they're young and you might say impressionable and still being shaped, what an easier task to shape people than to have to reshape people, you might say.
Yeah.
And I like middle schoolers a lot. A lot of even youth workers, youth pastors don't appreciate middle schoolers, and I think for some of those same reasons. High schoolers can be more cynical, more kind of the mold set a little bit more, but the middle schools are just pliable, and they respond to the positive input and molding, and it's just a cool thing to see that happen in their lives, and to see the light bulb go on, and to see them follow Christ.
Yeah. I heard when Glenn was talking about being 16 in Sunday school and hearing this stuff. Totally can relate to that, because like I said, I was raised in a church, so I get that. Did you have somebody influencing you, Dwayne, at that age?
Yeah, I did. It would have been my youth pastors, youth workers.
Okay.
Definitely various ones. I grew up in the same church that I'm in now, Frontline. So it was a small, kind of a small town rural church, and then we would have, typically our youth leaders they were all volunteers, but they would be students out of Grace Bible. So they would be there for a year or two and move on. But, some of them were very influential. Dan Payne is a man that was influential. Joel McGarvey, you'll recognize some of those names. Those were people that helped shape my life.
Very cool. That's awesome. All right, John.
Yeah, I think for me, why, I always viewed, well, I can't say always, having been raised in a church, my faith has always been a part of my life, but it was a compartment of my life. And at the age of 19, I really rededicated my life to the Lord. It was at a conference that I said, okay, God, you got all of me. And but I went to Grace, and I always wanted to be in ministry, but I just had a passion for business. That was my, I went to Grace, and I never wanted to be a pastor. I wanted to be in business. I wanted to do something. I enjoy that. But I always wanted to help serve in a church by being a board member or something, just, a teacher, a supporter, or whatever else, but not the pastor. And so when I was 21, I guess 22, and that's when I really it was like God said, no, John, I want you to be a pastor. And I guess I couldn't see myself doing anything else. It just, I went from passionate about business and, doing something with that to I got to be a pastor. And I think really what it came down to was affecting people's lives. There is, I tell people, some people are like, man, I don't know how you're a pastor. And I say, man, I get a front row seat. I get a front row seat for life change. That's what I get. I see people at their worst. I see people at their best. And there's nothing like it. I mean, you get to, and you are a part of that. And it just, that's the best part of ministry, is being a part of people's lives. And, when light bulbs go off because they're like, oh my goodness, that's what that meant. Or, you're journeying with somebody through their crap and you are able to demonstrate to them what the grace of God looks like, or you're able to demonstrate what the truth of God looks like, or, just those things. And so I think for me, the why is seeing life change in people's like crack. It is addictive. That's why I do it.
That's amazing, because I think that's true. Whether it's even in business side of things now with Farm Bureau, I relate with Dwayne a lot in this, that one, it gives me a schedule to be able to be flexible, whether it's, with MCMD or church or just people that I know who may have a need, or I just feel like hanging out with. That's number one. And then number two is, and I've said this all along, is I truly feel right now that I'm engaged more in ministry now and disciple making now than I ever was in the church. The churches, for whatever reason, the churches that I've served in have all been very, very open to ideas and how we go about discipling people, but they always want to put it in the box of a program. Okay, we'll do this for 8 weeks, and that's a great idea. We got 6 weeks to do that, and you can't hardly break out of that. And what I started realizing was I had to start operating as a disciple maker with the teams that I worked with. I started discipling teams so they could disciple others. And it was really, for me, it was good, but it didn't fit within the programmatic nature of the churches that I was part of. And so I'm getting older, I'm 50. I'm going, man, maybe youth ministry isn't the area. Maybe church ministry just isn't what I need to be doing. And God opened up this door for me to start working with the Farm Bureau. And right away, I saw the impact of being with people all the time. And when it comes to insurance, I mean, real estate's very similar. But when it comes to insurance, people are coming to you because they have a need. And that need is pretty immediate. Or you're seeking out people who don't even know they have a need. It's very disciple making oriented. Most people in our churches don't even know that they have something missing in their life, or they do, and that's why they're coming, one or the other. And so that's why I started doing, started working with the Farm Bureau, and I've realized that I have more disciple making opportunities now than I ever have. One of my sayings in insurance is, making friends out of clients and turning clients into friends. And that clients into friends piece has been huge. And, on my MCMD page, I don't know if you guys have seen it yet, but, one of the things that is who I am is I am a fierce friend. If you're a friend of mine, I am going to fight for you. I'm going to champion for you. Doesn't matter what the situation is. And part of that fierceness is coming alongside of you and saying, okay, let's think about this thing, your whole life, not just your physical life. Let's talk about the spirituality. I had a just quick story. I walked into a house, this is before the shutdown, and it was a lady. It was grandma and grandpa, lady. It was a farm, and her husband had died, and we were literally delivering a $2 million check to this lady for the life insurance. And,
Wow.
Before we even got to that part, we were still during the hey, this is who I am kind of part of the meeting. And the lady whose husband had died, she looked at me right in the eyes and she says, "You're a pastor." And I was like, it blew me away. I was like, why do you say that? And she goes, the way you're looking at me, the way you're engaging with my family is very attentive. You're paying a lot of attention to us. And she goes, either you're a pastor or you're an undertaker, one or the other. And I'm like, wow, okay, I am not an undertaker. I assure you of that. But it allowed me to go into
those two things are so related.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, right,
because
right.
who gets paid attention to? You get paid attention to from a congregate standpoint, or when someone in your family dies. I mean, they really do pay attention to you. They play a pastoral role, and but it blew me away. And you know, the agency owner was with me because the amount of the check and everything else. We left out of there, and he goes, "Don't ever forget that." And I said, "What?" He said, "That's who you are."
Yeah.
He said, "That's your why." He said, "That's why you're doing Farm Bureau Insurance, is because you're helping people and you're there for them." And I was just like, wow. And it just reaffirmed with me that God doesn't care whether we're working in churches or not. One, he's looking for obedience. Are you willing to do what I ask you to do? And then number two is, are you willing to keep your eyes open to the opportunities I'm bringing in front of you? And what are you going to do with those? So that's kind of my why on why I'm doing what I'm doing now. It is totally ministry related. So Dwayne, I get you. I'm right there with you.
Mm-hmm.
I love the whys.
You know, Greg, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
I wonder if, I guess I'm playing some of what you said in my brain here. I wonder if the reason why you feel like you're doing more ministry is because you're not having to worry about ministry plans. You're not having to worry about, you know, what are we going to be teaching in the next 3 months? That whole and I use that term, organizational ministry. There are some who are wired for it.
Yes.
And then there are others who are not wired for it. They're wired for people. And I guess I wonder if I think of, you know, some of the conversations I've had with Carl and how much fun he's having right now going through the stuff that he's doing. He's not having to worry about his preaching schedule for the next 6 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, it's really just a one-on-one investment. Okay, God, what are we doing today? It's not this long-term, and I wonder if that's the struggle with what we call the organized church.
Yes.
Because it's not so organic. It really is. It really is an organizational machine.
Oh yeah, I agree. Well, I wonder if that I would like to hear what your thoughts on that too, Dwayne or Greg, because I mean John understands this. I've been a paid pastor for 22 years. And, you know, we'll say maybe 2 of those years were special speakers. So that means I've preached over 1,000 sermons in my lifetime, you know, and that is something that you have to do. You know, I never imagined myself being an academic, but that's literally all I do. I read all week and I study all week and I write this 6-page paper and I give, you know, and you know what I'm saying? I never imagined me doing that for a job. But it's almost like I have to do that. I have to map out what's going to happen. I got to plan out what's going to happen. You know, we just had Mother's Day, so I had to have a Mother's Day sermon. We're having Memorial Day in a couple of weeks. I got to figure out a Memorial Day. That may not be what I wanted to talk about, but since that's the holiday, I got to figure that out, you know, or you know what I'm saying? And it's almost a forced, it's like a forced thing. But you guys, you know, you've picked something, you know, I like business too. I was actually really good at it and I gave it up. But you guys are engaged in those 2 lives and you're making those 2 lives come together.
Yeah.
And maybe it is. I think you're right, John. It could be more organic because you're just kind of doing what, you know, there's no pressure, there's no
right.
thing. So yeah, you know what I'm saying? So I'd love to hear from Greg or Dwayne how how that worked. Yeah, what that looks like.
Yeah.
You
I know I can speak to it just from I was always good at administration. I was always good at the organizational type stuff, but I hated every single minute of it. Every minute that I had to calendar, I had to put out schedules of teaching, and the actual teaching itself, I love preaching, I love teaching, but the planning of it is horrible. It's the worst thing in the world. Again, there is that obligation piece that, oh, Mother's Day's coming up or Easter's coming up or whatever it is. And, but that being said, it also took time away from what I really wanted to do. And what I really wanted to do was be an influencer in people's lives. I wanted to work with my team that was overseeing youth ministry. You know, I had 18 volunteers that were working with middle school and high school. I wanted to spend time with them, you know. And then, of course, parents are wanting you to spend time with their kids, which that was a different battle because I love their kids, but that's not – I knew to be more effective, I couldn't spend time with everybody. I had to spend time with people who could spend time with their kids. Parents don't understand that. But, yeah, the administrative side, and my wife says it all the time, but you're so good at it. I said, yeah, but I hate it. Even in business right now, I hate systems and structures. I hate every minute of it. I know it has to be done. And I know to be effective, I have to do that in a lot of ways. But I hated every minute of it. And so, yeah, that's my whole thing. So if you, ideally in a church, if you could say, hey, we want you to preach on Sunday morning and the rest of the time, we just want you spending time with people, that would be ideal, you know. But unfortunately, that's not how we have to operate sometimes. So I don't know about Dwayne, but that's kind of my take.
Yeah, and I would just caution John, don't go quit your day job right now.
Wow.
I'm just seeing the wheels turning. John and Glenn, they're going to quit the church and just get a job where they can go hang out with people. And you know, I mean, it sounds good, and there are benefits to it, but I'm not involved in ministry as intensely, you know, as I was before. While I say ministry is I think and should be for those of us who follow Christ should be primary, but as far as my time, it's not primary. You know, I do have flexibility. If I want to go spend time with somebody, I can do that, but it's not like I'm spending all day, every day, just hanging out and discipling people. You know, so, you know, it sounds good. It sounds great if we could just get paid for ministry and go out and hang out with people all day long, but that's not really reality.
Correct.
You know, the administrative. What's that, Glenn?
I said that's almost youth ministry.
Yeah, it is somewhat. That's why I was in youth ministry. That's why I wasn't ever called to adult ministry.
Well, I think and you're exactly right, Dwayne. I mean, I go through these seasons in my own life and brain, and you know, and there are parts to every job that are, you know, the drudgeries, and then there are parts that are like the joys, and I know that. I think though, you know, and this is the part that I think I've wrestled with, you know, and even being away through quarantine, all this stuff is, you know, really if you boil it down, what is the I think of that fancy the fancy Latin word sine qua non, you know, without which it isn't. What is the sine qua non of the church, of the local church? And you know, your comment, you know, Greg, about how the church always wants to program stuff. I am so grateful for my church that we've not gotten into that mode, you know, but I do also know though that there is this fine line between and just an organic ministry and an organizational machine that we have to live in the messy middle between that. And I think that messy middle is the difficulty, because some days it feels much more organic and I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And then there are other days where it feels like a machine and I'm just dreading it. And so those are the, yeah. But I'm not planning to quit today.
I think the healthy part of that though is we know that tension always happens. We know it does,
Mhm.
and it's how we respond to that tension that's really important. I think we grow through that tension more than we do anywhere else. If it was organic all the time and everything was great all the time, which it wouldn't be because we're all messy people,
Right.
but just even that feeling, you go, oh, we got this utopia in our mind. Wow, that'd be awesome. Well, really, would you grow though?
Right.
Would our obedience be as strong as it is right now because we're going, God, I'm dependent on you? I don't know.
Yeah.
For me, I think I would be honestly, I think I would be a nightmare if I was like in utopia all the time because I would have no dependence on God whatsoever.
Yeah.
I think all of us have been in ministry long enough that there are certain buttons you can push to get certain responses from people, and God reminds me all the time not to push that button, to do what He wants me to do and not what I want to do. So I think that's right, John. I think that tension is actually good. I don't like it,
No.
but I think it's good. Glenn, I want to jump back to something you said because it kind of talks about in the questions that you guys journaled about, that we journaled about. You said, you were referring to Jeremy, and when he said, when our lives are full and overflowing, it kind of goes back to other people. What, if you had to narrow it down to one thing, what is that one thing that is, that fills you guys up, that puts you at a place where you are overflowing into other people?
You know what? To be honest with you, I think it would be. It's simply to put it. It starts with me. When I was listening to you talk and stuff like that, you're talking about the business side of it. Well, I was in business for like over 20 years and managing restaurants and manufacturing plants and stuff, and I was actually really good at it, but I hated it. Just because you're good at it doesn't mean you have to like it. But the whole time I was doing it, I kind of felt like I was using my God-given gifts. It's kind of like the dark side of the force. God was giving me these gifts, and instead of me using them for God, I was utilizing them in other ways. Whenever I worked for large companies, large corporations, I always inevitably became like a corporate trainer or a person that developed, training modules, and I, would train other managers, and I would train employees and stuff like that. And the last company I worked for, I was a corporate trainer at the largest and most utilized corporate training facility at California Pizza Kitchen. And the busiest and most, we funneled more managers through that facility than any other place in the company. And, I almost felt like I was utilizing my God-given gifts to preach and to teach and to mentor and to counsel and to, all those things that I would use for the church. I was using them in that way, but I was using them for business. And I like the idea of working for a church, or at least focusing on the church, even though it may be tough at times trying to organize things, that organizational structure. I feel like I'm utilizing those gifts for me and for the Lord, for that journey. You know what I'm saying? Instead of utilizing it for the benefit of someone else, I'm doing it now to benefit me, to benefit what the Lord is going to teach me, and that fills me to overflowing. And then once I have that overflowing, I can feel it. We've all been there, hopefully. On a Sunday when you teach a class or you do a sermon or something like that, and you walk off the stage and you go, yeah, that was good. You know, I mean, we've all had that, you know. We've all had that and you've had the other times where you walk off the stage and go, "Oh my goodness, I need to get out of here fast." Before
I wasted their time. Yes.
yeah, exactly. You know, but I like those moments when I walk off the stage and I go, "Man, that was a good one," and I look back on it and I realize that it was God carrying me through that, because I deviated from my notes here, and I talked about something beyond what I normally had noted right here, and it was just so impactful because the Lord took over at that moment, and I was overflowing. Like, I already did all the parts that I needed to do my studying through the week. God was in me and he was overflowing, and that overflowing poured into all those people, just kind of washed over them.
Yeah.
And that's the part I like. I wasn't happy doing that, you know, in like the business world for other companies. They were gaining that benefit, you know, like the dark side, they were gaining the benefit of what the Lord had gifted me with. But now you know, in answer to your question, I think that's it. What overflows in me, or what causes me to overflow, is my commitment to the Lord in and of itself. Just focusing on me studying, me learning, me doing, and focusing on that journey, because then I just overflow. It's just natural. It just naturally happens. You know what I mean? I don't have to work at it. It just kind of happens, and you know, it overflows and washes over people, and that's an amazing feeling, you know. And the best part about it is I didn't really have to do much. God was doing it all, and I was just along for the ride.
Nice. That's good.
You know, I think for me with that, Glenn, is you know, a couple weeks ago I preached on contentment, and the thing that really I've been chewing on it ever since was that, you know, that verse, "I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength," Philippians 4:13. The whole premise behind that is I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength, out of a pursued relationship with him. That it is,
Right.
It's that abiding, moment by moment, day by day dependence on him. That's the only way that I can do all things. And that's the part where I get spiritual ADD. You know, one day I'm really good, I'm solid, you know, I'm committed, man. I'm dialed in. I'm praying about everything. I feel like the Spirit's leading me on everything, and I don't intentionally wake up the next day and say, "God, I can do this on my own." It's just, you know, the thoughts and the concerns of, "I got to do this today. I got to do this today," and rather than really trusting, it's kind of you know, I got this, and until I'm brought back again to the point where it's like, "Okay, no, John, you don't have this. You need me." And okay, good. And then I'll go 2-3 days where every time I'm just talking to God. So I've just found that for me, it's that ongoing prayer dependence, you know, just that relationship. It's the pursued relationship that I fight with it. That's the battle is won or lost on whether or not I'm living out of the flesh or the Spirit. And the flesh isn't just porn or something bad. The flesh is just, "I got this, God." And so that for me is the overflowing cup. Like I guess I'll give an example today. As I was thinking through this, you know, getting ready for my morning, I was just feeling a lot of things. Like, I got to do this, 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 and so I watched Jeremy's thing first thing this morning, and I really felt God saying, "Okay, you know, we have a group prayer time for pastors in the Byron Center area." And I was really looking forward to getting onto the call just to find out what the other pastors are doing. You know, are they planning to meet? You know, because that's the question on everybody's brain. When are we going to start meeting again? So I really wanted to, but I felt no peace at all about getting on that call. And it was like God was just saying, "John, just meet with me." But I'm like, no, it doesn't make any sense. I really need to go over here and, you know, talk to these guys, because that's information. And it was like, no, don't. And so I just shut it off, and I got on my knees by that bed over there, and I just prayed, and it was like God just started putting things into place. And and I think to myself, why don't I do that more often? But I'm human, so anyway.
Yeah. It's funny because when you're talking,
Mhm.
John, all that keeps coming to mind is the idea in the scriptures when it says that God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. And that grace for me is what fills and overflows. It's not my effort. It's not anything else.
Right.
But yeah, so that's so good.
Right.
Wayne, how about you, buddy? What is it that kind of gets you to the point of overflowing?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of it's a combination of just that fellowship with God and with other people. That interaction with God is that kind of one-on-one time that the introverted part of me needs, and then other people is what the extroverted part of me needs, and that's what energizes. But the time with God has to come first. John can't stand this, but I love to get away for even a couple of days by myself out in the national forest, with a tent and a notebook to journal in and a Bible, and just go out there and sit.
Oh.
And that kills John. but that's what energizes me, preferably by a lake or a stream, but or on a mountaintop or something. But so I need, it's kind of that duality. I need both of those things, but it's an extended time with God is what really energizes.
Nice. And that overflows into other people, obviously, too. So,
How about you, Greg?
It's funny because I'm kind of a combination of everybody. I in my memory and in my heart, I know that the times that I've felt where God is just overwhelming me to where I am just naturally outpouring with other people are right after those times of solitude, are right after those times of being alone with Him, whether it's for a weekend, which I'm with John. I cannot stand the idea of being in a friend of mine, Mark, his name's Mark Jacobs. He's a pastor out in Iowa. He always takes, like, every 2 months, he'll take a weekend away from his family or everything, and he goes camping by himself. I mean, he's a lot like what you just described, Dwayne. He'll take a tent,
Nice.
he'll take some protein bars and minimal food, and he takes a journal, his Bible, and a pen, and that's it. And that sounds miserable to me. That just sounds horrible.
Sounds wonderful.
But yet, that being said, anytime I have done that, I've had the opportunity to do that. Usually I take my fishing pole with me. And they've been incredible times between just me and God. There is no distraction. There is no, it's sucking in nature. It's creation, and just knowing that God is really my sole focus in that moment. And those are times like that. That being said, I also find times where when I'm engaged with other people is when God uses other people to fill me up and overflow. So I think it's funny how I have a combination of all those. And honestly, the killer for me is busyness. It is 100% busyness, whether it's in business or in ministry. When I am busy, I can literally feel my physical and emotional and spiritual tanks all being drained as I go. And unfortunately, too many times I don't catch it soon enough. And then I'm out of commission for 3, 4, 5 days going, man, I'm just exhausted. And so God literally in those times goes, see, I told you, all you have to do is rely on me in those situations instead of relying on your own strength. And now you have to rely on me because you're out of commission. I'm stubborn that way, and that's one of my character flaws, and I know that. And but yeah, that's I don't know how many times that has to happen though before I go, okay, God, I get it. And like I said, too many times I don't catch it soon enough. But the good thing is that I do catch it, and I know that we live, you know, we live a minute by minute, moment by moment world, and I can turn that around at any time. As soon as I turn to God and say, "Okay, you've got it, not me," and luckily, I have a family and a wife that'll remind me pretty quick too that, hey, something's off right now. That's how they describe it too. It's funny because they're like, my oldest son is classic. And is, Dad, what's going on? Are you okay? I know as soon as he says that, he's got some insight into something going on in my life that I might not even see myself, and it causes me to stop and reflect. And I go, wow, okay, he's absolutely right. And then of course confessing to him, no, this is what's going on, whether whatever it is a healthy part too. So that's kind of for me where that overflowing and pouring into others comes in. So thanks for asking that, John.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it is 11:36, and I know all of us have stuff to do, or at least I do. I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to email out this. It's just a general email. It's going out to everybody. Scotty wanted us to email it to everybody, and it really is more about continuing some of these conversations at a later time. I know I've enjoyed them, so I'm looking forward to some more of those conversations in the future. So be looking for that email. Be praying for Matt. This morning, if you have a minute, just lift Matt up. We can even do it right now as we're closing, as a matter of fact. So, I get the strain of children and schoolwork and trying to finish up, and I think we all do. So, let me go ahead and close us. And if somebody wants to pray for Matt, please jump in and do that. And and we'll get off the call. God, thank you for this time that we could get together, God. And I so enjoy these conversations with these guys. And I know, we just talked about overflowing. This is something that fills me up, God. And I appreciate the fact that you've placed them in my life and allowed some of that overflowing to happen, or that overflow and that filling to even happen right now. So God, thank you for that.
God, I think of that even, but you do give grace to the humble. And I think these sort of calls are just great reminders that A, we're not sufficient in and of ourselves. We desperately need you. Need your body. We were designed to be the body of Christ, and the body needs other parts of the body. And so I know I have also been blessed by this time of having these calls. And on the one hand, it makes my schedule more busy. On the other hand, these are really good opportunities for growth and stretching and stuff. So I thank you for them. But I do think of Matt right now. I know we, within ministry, we walk that fine line between being committed to ministry, doing ministry, and following through on commitments and things that we say we're going to do. And yet, God, a family is a priority. And so I'm not here to judge whether Matt made the right call or not today. That's between him and you. But I just pray that even though he may not have had this discussion, he may not have had this time, that you would strengthen his soul, that you would give him the wisdom he needs to be the parent that he needs to be with his kids. And kids can be challenges sometimes. And there's a lot that's been put on parents as being I guess people who deal with the online side of things and not allow our kids just to go to school. But so just be with Matt and Sharon and the kids. Just give Matt the wisdom and diligence that he needs to be able to be a strong leader of the GGF, as well as a strong parent and a godly influence in his home.
Mm-hmm.
Lord, thank you for this time that we've been able to be together in this way. As life is kind of changing a little bit right now, and there's a whole bunch of new norms that are going on. Dear Lord, I would ask that you would give us an extra measure of wisdom in these times. These are new frontiers. I mean, who would have known something like this could have happened other than you? How do we handle it? What's the most prudent thing to do? Matt's an example of that, how he had to prioritize his family, and because of the situation that's going on with the whole pandemic and homeschooling and everything, it's just difficult on all of us. So, dear Lord, once again, I'd ask for an extra measure of wisdom in this time to know your will and purpose, and extra strength to be able to do whatever it is, an extra measure of courage to be able to do it. And dear Lord, I would ask that you would just be with each one of us and help continue with us in that journey that will overflow us to those around, so that we will be able to not only have a good walk with you, we'll be able to honor you, glorify you, and reproduce you in others around us.
Father God, I thank you for just the opportunity to be with these men, to learn from them, to grow with them, to be challenged. And God, I thank you for their ministries, and just pray for your continued blessing, your continued guidance, your continued strength for each of them as we move forward, God. And I pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Well, guys, that was the last VLC of the GGF conference. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Again, be looking for that email. We're also going to send out a survey, obviously, trying to figure out how in the future we can put more of these together, and, MCMD as well as the GGF. We're just looking for some feedback to obviously make us better. So I enjoyed every minute of it. Dude, the laughter was unbelievable. And it's very healthy for me. So I just appreciate you guys, and just know that just because the official calls are over, doesn't mean we have to not, get together. So take care, guys. Have a great day. God's blessing upon all of you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
See you guys.
See you guys.
See you tonight, John.